Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. Once again this morning we wake up to another mass shooting, an active shooter in Lewiston, Maine. This follows Nashville, Tennessee at a school and Louisville, Kentucky at a bank earlier this year. As of the latest news account, in Maine there are 18 dead, 13 wounded, and the killer is still at large. There's a reason the mainstream media wants to harp on gun control and not killer control. And I've already posted a video that tells you how we can really stop these people if we truly want to. But we have to have the courage to try. If you want to know my thoughts on this, stick around. On the thumbnail I posted for this video, I entitled it, "We Must Ban These." That doesn't mean banning so-called assault rifles or so-called high-capacity magazines. They are not the problem. The problem is a bunch of mentally ill people who slip through the cracks are able to get their hands on guns when they're not supposed to. And I addressed this in an earlier video I did that I entitled, "Ban the Killers, Not the Guns." I'll put a link right up here. We know how to stop most of these events, and I cover that pretty well in the other video, I think. We simply don't have the courage to shout down I'm not sure what to call the people on the other side anymore. They're mostly Democrats, they're mostly liberals, they're mostly Marxists, if you want to be truthful about it. The left. We don't have the courage to shout them down, and we don't have the courage to take the necessary steps because the mainstream media is going to try to destroy us if we even say it out loud. That's where this country is at in this particular moment. Here's what they want. They want civilian disarmament. They want that almost more than anything, and to them, these active shooter events help their cause. So they don't really want to stop them. It helps their goal of trying to disarm all the rest of us because they can't accomplish the changes they want to make in this country so long as armed people are out there to resist them. And whether you believe that or not, that's really the simple telling of this story. I can easily predict that after this shooting in Maine, we're going to see the mainstream media, we're going to see the leftists in this country harp once again on the need to ban assault rifles and ban high-capacity magazines. In other words, to start the process of completely disarming the American population. And that's really what they want. They will occasionally slip and tell the truth, and that's what they want. There are two primary reasons that they're going to use this event to really hammer hard. First of all, the left has an overwhelming desire to retaliate against the Supreme Court of the United States. Because in the last couple of years, 3 of their absolute holy grail issues have been taken away from them by the Supreme Court. In the earth-shattering ruling of NYSERPA versus Bruin, the Supreme Court said you can not only possess firearms as an individual citizen, you can carry them. And even though that Supreme Court ruling is rather crystal clear, we've seen several states, including New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, Washington, have now gone on to even further their bans. They are essentially flipping a big finger in the face of the Supreme Court, saying, you don't know what you're doing. The Ninth Circuit, justifying why they are referred to as the Ninth Circus of Appeals, has flipped a finger to them as well. This has got to stop somewhere, but that points out how viciously angry the left is when they lost gun control of the Supreme Court. But they lost 2 other things as well. I think the biggest that hurt them was Roe versus Wade. They lost mandated federal rights to abortion. I got to tell you, when you base your whole philosophy on the ability to kill unborn babies, I have to question your mental standing as it is. Whether or not you'd agree with that, it's not a privacy issue, and it's not a part of the U.S. Constitution, which is all the Supreme Court said. If states want to have laws that allow abortions, they can do that. The federal government just can't mandate it. And then, of course, the third of their holy grails was affirmative action. In two different cases involving Harvard University and the University of North Carolina, it got combined. The Supreme Court said you can no longer have racially based admittance to your university. You cannot favor one race over another, which seems to be so simple that even leftists should agree with that, but they don't. They want preferential treatment, basically for anybody who's not white, I guess. That's really where this country seems to be headed. The second reason I think they're going to use this Maine shooting as a hammer to try to force through everything they want is the leftists who still have two brain cells to rub together, still have the ability to make some semi-rational thought. I think they know that next year, in the 2024 election cycle, they stand to lose massively in a way that could damage their ideals for decades. They're really going to run President Biden for a re-election term. This guy's the poster child for dementia. They're going to run Vice President Harris. The more we see her on TV, the more I believe that her brain can barely generate enough electrical power to keep her heart beating. But no, the only other Democratic candidate who stuck his head up, Kennedy, is now going to run as a third party. So I think they understand that they are looking at a defeat of massive proportions. If they're going to accomplish anything of their leftist goals, they're going to have to do it soon. And desperate people can come up with some very desperate ideas. But specifically about the Maine shooting. This is a classic failure of really both law enforcement and the mental health system. Primarily the mental health system. Now, we do not know enough about these attacks. It was at multiple locations. Virtually every police department in the country has been trained over the last 23, 24 years how to conduct rapid deployment. Some places it's called active shooter response. The point is, when we get these calls, we have to go balls to the wall with everybody who can go. And the process of trying to hunt down the killer has to start with the first arriving officer. That's not how the system started. It started with building a 4 or 5 man contact team. But I did some of the breakthrough research that looked at this situation and said we don't have time to assemble 4 people in most police locales. First officer in has to go try to hunt down the killer. I don't know why they were not able to make contact with this guy. It could be that they did the best job they possibly could and it just didn't work out for them. Time will tell. If we find out that they had some warning about this guy's behavior and the police agencies took no action to stop it, now we've got a problem that we need to deal with. But primarily from what we know now, this is a mental health system failure. My former colleague at Police One, Dan Marcoux, he was an experienced SWAT leader from Wisconsin, did his own research a number of years ago, and he identified 5 phases of an active shooter. In 4 of these phases, we often have chances to interfere with them and stop the attack. His 5 phases are fantasy, planning, preparation, approach, and implementation. In the fantasy process, most of these people will leave clues. They may even tell people they know about the thoughts that they have or the goals they might have in killing certain people or attacking certain places. If you hear something, say something. So there's a chance to interfere with this, and a number of these have been stopped in this fantasy phase. Planning. Most of these people plan their attacks fairly well. A lot of times those plans will be in writing and will be seen by other people. Again, if you see something, say something. Hundreds upon hundreds of these situations have been stopped by local police agencies when someone calls them and alerts them to what's going on. In the preparation phase, this is where they gather the necessary tools. If they don't already have guns, they're going to go out and buy those guns. So it's imperative that the mental health system, if they have knowledge of this person, they have knowledge of some instability, they need to get involved before this process so that the instant check system for gun purchase in the country can stop these people. But you have to get that information into the system, and the mental health professionals really don't want to do that. They don't seem to really want to help people anymore. What they want to try to do is coddle them. I've heard these people say, well, we don't want to hurt their self-esteem. That's why we have blue cities full of homeless camps, because most of those people should be institutionalized. But over the last 40 or 50 years, the mental health system has closed those facilities. They have denied us anywhere to warehouse these people who are simply not able to function in modern society. I'm sorry that they can't. I'm sorry we can't wave a Harry Potter magic wand and make them normal, but we haven't figured out how to do that yet. Medications can help so long as they take them. But so many of these people take the medications, then they feel fine, then they don't think they need the medications, and then we go into a vicious cycle. And it's not unusual for the police to be involved and bring these people into an emergency detention system. And in most states, that can last up to 72 hours. But by the time the mental health professionals see them to assess them, they've calmed down. The cops get to see them at their worst. They see them when they've got their mask back up and the real them doesn't come through. And then they turn them loose because they say, well, they're no danger to themselves or others. Yes, they are. Yes, they were. So in this climate of law enforcement where they want social workers to go to these calls instead of cops, I'm completely in favor of it. Let them see these nutcases when they are being nutcases, and maybe we'll start the process of fixing this. I'm sorry, soapbox. Also in this preparation phase is when they're likely to do intel on the attack venues. If they're going to go visit these places and do a walkthrough, that's all part of the planning and preparation process. Most of them are pretty detailed about what they do. And people who know them a lot of times get clues. And as I said, hundreds upon hundreds of these nationwide have been stopped because someone thought, gee, this guy's going to snap and be a school shooter or something, and they called law enforcement. That's the chance we have to stop it. But when we get past preparation and we move into the fourth level of approach, it's almost too late to do something now. But if they are approaching dressed in a certain way or obviously showing a firearm, citizens can still make that call. They can make that 911 call and get the cops a leg up on making that very rapid deployment or active shooter response that we need to try to stop the killing. And fifth, the fifth stage is implementation. This is where it's too late to head it off. It's underway, and now we have to depend on those cops to go as hard as they can, to risk their lives, and run to the sound of the guns. We've seen it fail a couple times at Uvalde, Texas, and Parkland, Florida before that. But this year in Nashville and in Louisville, we saw phenomenal response. Costly response. One of the first police officers on the scene in Louisville was shot in the head with an AR-15 weapon. It's doubtful he will ever come back to normal life. So a heavy price was paid, but they stopped the killing. I think that's what cops are paid to do. There are cops out there that don't agree. They shouldn't be cops, in my opinion. The shooter in Maine was reportedly institutionalized earlier this year. Now, stop and think about that. The ability to institutionalize someone into a mental health facility in this country has become so difficult as to be nearly impossible in some states. If he was institutionalized, yet no one reported him to law enforcement or to the instant check system for firearms, then somebody has a hell of a toll to pay for why that wasn't done. If he was institutionalized, that means we don't suspect him of being mentally ill. We're pretty sure he's mentally ill. And we're pretty sure this guy should not have access to guns. He was reportedly a firearms instructor. He reportedly had some type of military, National Guard, or Army Reserve background. That's an especially big flag to wave. Someone who knows how to use these weapons effectively, if he needs to be institutionalized for mental health problems, that is when these red flag laws that are, in my opinion, probably unconstitutional, but so long as they are on the books, this is the point where we need to use them. This is what they were designed to do. Keep guns out of the hand of someone who's going to go crazy with them if we let them continue to have guns. Folks, this stuff isn't rocket science. So what we're really looking at here is just a never-ending stream of people who the system knew were troubled people, were mentally ill people. And those troubled people then go on to shoot up a bunch of innocent souls. And then we see the media sources call for gun control over everything else. They will never call for mental health system reform, which is really the major underlying problem here. And that is another pet peeve of mine. Already today, we see major media outlets trot out their experts. Even Fox News. It's just usually some retired FBI guy or some NYPD official, and so they can explain why we keep seeing this violence and these active shooter and mass killing events. I've done a lot of research on active shooter events, and we have reached the point where we can kind of pattern these people, and we can predict that certain behaviors are likely to take them down this road. Now, I have not been active in it for quite a while. I don't keep up with the details of every shooting. A guy named Ron Borsch in Ohio. Ron keeps detailed records on this stuff, so he's up to speed on it very well. But I'll tell you who's not up to speed on it very well. And that's the FBI or NYPD guys we see on the news with their $200 haircuts and their $2,000 suits. These people have never gotten close to a mass shooting event. I'd venture to say none of them have ever been through the active shooter response training to even know how the cops are supposed to run that system. But they're the experts. So here's my challenge to the good media out there, Fox News, One American News, somebody like that. Why don't you get a real expert who can tell you where the problem in this situation comes from? It comes from the mental health system primarily. It comes from not getting these people into the instant check system to deny them the purchase of guns. It can be a law enforcement failure where agencies get the information but don't act strongly enough to stop an incident. Or they respond to the incident but they don't respond aggressively enough to get it stopped. Why don't you get an expert on there to say these things, that these things we can change, tell you the real problems that exist here and how we can ban the killers, not the so-called assault rifles, not the so-called high-capacity magazines, which all the media sources want to blow completely out of proportion. Yeah, in a perfect world, maybe we wouldn't have guns at all. That's not how our world evolved, and it's not likely to be how our world will evolve from this point on. Open your eyes, understand reality. The weapons are there. You can't make them all go away. So we need to focus on the things we can change. And we can change how we deal with these people when they pop up on the radar as a troubled person who has some mental health issues. Until we do that, this problem will continue. Instead, we hear about gun control. Because the radical left want these active shooter incidents to continue. And they want to use them to get to their goal of changing our society completely, knowing that they first have to ban all the guns before they can accomplish that. Let's ban the killers. We can make a huge difference in the number of these things if we have the will to do it. And now we're also facing a threat of global jihad with sleeper cells here in the United States. If we see these things happen, it's likely to look just a lot like what happened in Maine yesterday. Hit and run attacks with small arms and possibly explosives. It's the same response that we need. Folks, things are not getting better out there. Stay safe. Thank you for watching. I'd like to take a little time to do a little business. First of all, shameless plug for my book, my second book, Building a Better Gunfighter. I have a number of these in paper copy. They are still available on either eBay or on my website at dickfairburn.com. The first book, Police Rifles, is no longer in print, but both of these will soon be out in an ebook format, so you can pick them up that way. I would also like to ask you to please subscribe, ring the little notification bell, and if you like what I'm doing here, give me a thumbs up. That's what helps grow this channel. That's what helps develop more content for you that are interested in what I want to do. So I appreciate it if you could buy the book, if you can subscribe, ring the bell, and give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much.